FX Medicine is your gateway to news, resources and information on the safe, evidence-based approach to practicing complementary and integrative medicine. Visit fxmedicine.com.au to sign up for e-news and stay up to date with the latest research, podcasts and industry information. This is FX Medicine and I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. Joining me on the phone today is Damien Christoph, nutritionist, naturopath and chiropractor. Damien is a highly sought after presenter and speaker in the wellness industry. With over 20 years of experience, Damien's in-depth knowledge of the body, nervous system, food functions and responses, coupled with his friendly and dynamic presenting style, has him in high demand. Focusing on food as key to unlocking optimal health and wellness, Damien presents in-depth facts and concepts that have never before been readily available to the public, offering all audiences, from industry experts to the general public, highly valuable content as he engages, educates and inspires audiences across the globe. Welcome, Damien. How are you?
Oh, Andrew, thanks. I'm great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Now, we're going to be talking about your online presence, if you like, but I also want to delve into a little bit of your history because you're a chiropractor by profession. So Tell me about your beginnings. What drew you to become a chiropractor in the first place?
It's the funniest thing because right now in the current climate, you go, why would you want to be a chiropractor? Because everyone's getting bashed up and there's all that, there's the medics getting on us. It's actually not really the medics. Most of the high-quality GPs and specialists around the town understand what we do. It's just the noisy ones, the Fossum ones.
Yeah.
They tend to be a little bit, upset with us and they don't really care to understand what we do. But the reason why I decided to become a chiropractor is because as a nutritionist and a naturopath, I was having profound results with my patients and I loved it. And I fell in love with naturopathy and nature cure and nutrition through being introduced to it by naturopath David Fitz many, many years ago. And I thought, I want to do that. But the people that I saw in my naturopathic practice that tended to express the most interest in health and were also the healthiest people that I saw, even though I was dealing with, sometimes very sick people, also saw the chiropractor down the road. And I thought, well, there's got to be something to this. And so I went and saw this chiropractor. His name was Gary Coleman, and he now practices in Point Cook in Melbourne. He was in Traralgon when I was in Gippsland as well. And he just explained to me the simplicity of what chiropractic is and how it's the maintenance of the nervous system and how the movement of the spine and the recognition of that movement in the cerebellum in the brain and, coordination of movement through the brain stem and so on and so forth actually improves the health of the body. And I thought that's fascinating. So I thought I'd go and study it. And it's as simple as that. And I experienced many amazing health benefits from chiropractic, way outside of the normal back pain, neck pain, headache model, which is what's often promoted. And I thought I really want to be part of that. I want to add that little feather to my cap. And so I took off and did 5 years of studying chiropractic, and I still absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic.
I think what's interesting from my standpoint as a nurse, I did an assignment on chiropractic and I was looking at the safety aspects. Now, this is years ago, and I remember a green journal. I think it was the Australian Journal of Public Health, and there was a series or an article in there looking at adverse events from manipulation, from adjustment, and 100% of the adverse events were from doctors trying to manipulate, not from chiropractors.
That's right.
I have to revisit that and actually make sure that what I think I'm remembering is actually a fact. But so I need to validate that thing. But I remember being very surprised at that. That it was
a really very, very safe practice, and we don't go and study for 5 years for nothing. 5 years of study, it's 30 hours a week. There's a lot of study, particularly when it's primarily focused on the nervous system, the delicateness and the intricacy of the nerves and the spinal and the interaction of the spine and the nervous system. There's a lot of dedicated study to ensure, number one, being safe, because you just got to look at the Hippocratic Oath, which is first do no harm. And so when somebody walks in the door, the first thing you want to do with them is help them get better. And so in studying the intricacy and the safety of how to assist the body and the nervous system and spinal cord to work really well. You train hard on it. It's not like doing a 6-month or a 6-week course like other people who are trying to copy us do. We train hard to be very safe and be very...
I think it's very interesting that in many medical training facilities, they no longer take the Hippocratic Oath because they can no longer say the words primum non nocere, because you've got things like chemotherapy.
Really?
Yeah,
true.
I think that's a very interesting point that we need to really understand. So can I ask you, have you developed a particular passion in treating certain groups of patients over your career?
Yeah, I have, Andrew. Originally, when I was... My primary focus has always been around food. Like it always has been. And even in chiropractic, whilst I do a chiropractic adjustment and assist people through their nervous system with chiropractic, I'm always talking about food. And the number one seminar that I present around Australia, and the main focus of most of my education is around nutrition and food. I love it. I think it's very fascinating. I think that for as long as we've been doing health by numbers, we've moved further and further away from what really should be going into our body en masse, which is food. And so I love to promote diet. And to that extent, I found myself helping a lot of people with weight, with cardiovascular disease issues, inflammatory diseases, and in particular diabetes. And that really has been a passion of mine, whether it be type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, gestational diabetes. I really find that whole part of it fascinating. But I suppose because I practice primarily now as a chiropractor, I don't get to see that many people in that setting anymore. But I do employ a naturopath, and she's wonderful, and she looks after that part of my practice that I still absolutely love. And I did a TV show at one point when I was in New Zealand called Downsize Me, and that show went for 36 episodes, 4 years.
Wow!
And we taught the average punter in New Zealand how to eat food to manage cholesterol, how to eat food to lose weight, and how to eat food to bring your blood sugar levels down. And it was a groundbreaking TV smash hit. It was the number 1 rated health TV show, or actually reality TV show in New Zealand at the time. And we nailed it. It was really great. So I'm very, very passionate about food and nutrition.
So can I ask you on that line, I've just recently had the honour of interviewing Pete Evans and Dr. Alessio Fasano, Dr. David Perlmutter, these greats of diet and nutrition.
Absolutely.
They might have their particular skew on diet, whether it be grain-free totally or whether it be mostly wheat-free, or, unless you're a celiac, then it's definitely wheat-free, or whether it be paleo. And my issue is, or my thoughts are, can you do paleo badly? Is that one of the things that you had to really teach people, is how to eat properly, whatever diet they chose?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Andrew. My feeling is that you can do anything badly. I've seen very unhealthy vegans. I've seen really unhealthy vegetarians. I've seen people who are literally killing themselves doing low carb, high fat. And I think the main message that should come through each of these eating programs, whether it be paleo, from Lauren Cordain, or Rob Wolf, or Paleo Pete, or if you're doing GAPS, the key thing should be that you eat plenty of plant-based material. That's so important.
Yeah.
It's easy for our body to digest. It's high in nutrition. It's high in phytochemicals that assist us. You just look at what Deanna Minich spoke about just the other day. All of those colours represent a function within the body, and it really does assist our bodies to stay well. And so plant food is unbelievably important. To that end, it's equally as important to select high-quality protein. So whether you're going vegan-based protein or you're going carnivorous-type proteins, it's so important to be choosing a high-quality protein. Just because it says it's protein doesn't mean it's going to be good for you. You can get the most highly refined protein, something that's got all the additives and all the colours and all the flavours and all that sort of stuff, and that might be protein. It might look like a result, but it's not going to perform the same way as a piece of, fresh steak, or a nice piece of fish, or, some really well-prepared, vegan grains, for example, to be able to boost your protein stores up. So I think people, when they attach themselves to a label, go, I'm paleo, or I'm vegan, or I'm vegetarian, they'll tend to go with what they already know about their lifestyle habits and what their dietary habits have been in the past, and just adapt it. They'll drop in a few things, take out a few things, and they kind of just go on that same track. You really need to invest some time to understand what it is that makes a particular eating program special and beneficial. So paleo is special and beneficial because of all of the vegetables, maybe because of the exclusion of some grains. The beneficial parts of vegan is because you're choosing more vegetables and more plant matter with the selection of appropriate proteins. But unhealthy vegans don't eat enough protein, and so on and so forth.
What I guess where I was going from is that one of the most important lessons I learned was from Mike Ash. And I remember a room, like it would have been, 200 people in the room, 200 practitioners, I might add. And Mike asked the audience and he said, where does digestion begin? And of course, everybody's going in the mouth and this sort of thing. And he said, no, in the brain. And it's just, it's really amazing how you can eat a paleo diet, but if you're stressed and you're bolting your food, you're still not going to be digesting it properly.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much. Yeah, there's stress associated with food and lifestyle habits and that sort of thing. I hear people go, one of my mates comes the other day and goes, I've gone sugar-free. I go, how come? He said, I was eating too much sugar. And he said, I've gone sugar-free for only a month. I go, why just a month? He said, because I don't think I could do it for any longer. I said, is it stressful for you? He goes, yeah, mate. I go, well, how good's it going to be? And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you're stressed out about going sugar-free, why don't you just find a way to decrease some of your sugar?
Yeah.
And he goes, because I've got to go 100%. And I said, it's the 100%. It's the fluctuation that create the damage. I said, if we're much more, controlled and we're measured and we move into something. So, maybe it's just taking the chocolate out in the evening. Don't have chocolate in the evening. Or maybe it's making sure if you're going to have an afternoon snack, you're snacking on nuts and seeds instead of, a muesli bar.
Yeah.
It's just making little changes.
Degrees, that's right. Look, I totally agree. If you've got a real quote-unquote allergy or a severe sensitivity to a food, then obviously you might have to think of avoiding it. Celiac is the perfect thing where you just cannot have wheat. But
that's right.
For most people, taking out something that gives them enjoyment is robbing them of something of life. It's just crazy. However,
the ceremony.
It can't be something that's causing them direct ill health by having so much of it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I 100% agree. The ceremony around food for me is so important. So if I'm sitting down with my family, and we live primarily a gluten-free lifestyle, and look, even chatting with Alessio the other day, Alessio Castano, was amazing. The symposium you guys put on was incredible, by the way.
Thank you.
And chatting with Alessio, and he still eats gluten. And what's I think really important to understand here is that if the founder of this whole zonulin thing still continues to eat gluten, we need to understand that, yes, it's an important function, but it's not the only thing. And there's a whole lot of other ceremony that goes with food that makes food beneficial and makes food nutritious. It's not just what's in the food that we're eating. It's how we prepare it. It's how we're involved in it, how we work with it. And there's so much more to it. I think zonulin is one part of it, and I think it's very, very important. It's probably the most important thing that we know at the moment. There's got to be a lot more that comes from that, though.
Yeah, I think the idea of wheat is that we've mucked with it so that it's not the wheat that nature provided. It's the wheat that I won't mention a certain chemical company, but we've hybridized it to include so many more genes than it originally had. That's the first thing. The other thing is that being a grass, we used to find it along the way and forage off it. So we'd pick a few kernels off and then move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So it was this minor part of our diet. Now it is a massive part of our diet. And this is one of it's a ridiculous premise that I just don't understand with the, the supposed standard Australian diet. To me, it's just crazy, absolutely crazy that it's become such a huge part.
You think about where the food pyramid came from and all that information that came from the food pyramid when it was designed in the early 80s. It was designed by the US Department of Agriculture, the USDA.
Yeah.
And so if an agricultural industry is designing food information and it comes through to us, and then our Dietitians Association then adopts it, and then Nutrition Australia starts to adopt it, and then moves through into the surgeries of the doctors who are the healthcare providers at the time. Of course, it's going to filter through to education, and so it's become kind of a bit of a dogma that's been really hard to live. But
absolutely.
From a nutrition perspective, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, that's right. And in the words of Dr. Jenny Brand Miller, the current guidelines simply have not worked. we need to investigate. Right. Hello, open our eyes. Hello.
That's right, McFly. Absolutely.
So, Damien, take me through this evolution that you've had from full-time practice, a real passion for diet, to starting a podcast business, which is like an empire for you. Where was the idea born?
I was doing a presentation in Western Australia. So as a chiropractor, we attend a seminar quite frequently. There's at least 1 or 4 of these seminars that we do every year. They're called Dynamic Growth. And Dynamic Growth is put on by the Australian Spinal Research Foundation. And it's basically a fundraiser so that we can do research into chiropractic. And the foundation contributes significant hundreds of thousands of dollars of research research dollars to the researchers to find out more about what chiropractic actually does for humans. Anyway, I was speaking at one of those events, and I met this guy, Lawrence Tam. He's a really up and coming, not up and coming. He's been a chiropractor for quite a long time, but he's up and coming in the speaking world. And having been a professional speaker for a long time, he was intrigued with the way in which I presented, and we just got talking. I said to him, "You know what, LT, we should do something about this." And he said, "Yeah, we should do something." So we started this thing, which was kind of a wellness coaching thing, where we thought we'd help chiropractors and naturopaths learn how to implement wellness strategies into their practice. And so we started doing this thing, and it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. And we thought, do we want to do this on top of our practice? And I also had Forage at the time, which is my muesli company. And I was like, do we want to be doing this on top of everything else? And we realized that it was just too hard to do. So we thought, and then Lawrence met another guy, Brett Hill, Dr. Brett Hill, who's a chiropractor in Adelaide. And so Lawrence and Brett got talking, and we all got talking. And we said, why don't we put together an information show? This new thing called podcasting is coming out. Let's get on the wagon really early, because it's going to fly. Apple's behind it, so of course it's going to get massive. And 5 years ago, we launched our first podcast. We had no idea what we were doing. We just got onto Skype one day, downloaded this thing called Skype Call Recorder, and we pushed record, and we started talking. And then, so to go into our very, very first episode, Lawrence was really nervous, and he was reading off scripts, and Brett had no idea what he should be saying and what his role was, and I was in there saying, this is what you've got to do, and it was so raw. And so we decided that this was a great medium to get information out. Very quickly, we grew to hold the number 1 position in podcasting in health. And I think that's probably because there wasn't many health podcasts out there. But at the same time, we still got there. And we still claim that title, Australia's number 1 health podcast. And we're now attracting, through our network, we've got a network now of 20 other podcasts. That includes Cindy O'Meara's podcast, Up for Chat, Steph Lowe, The Real Food Real. There's just so many amazing podcasts that we've got on our network, 20 of them on the Wellness Couch. And we now put on different events, for people, for the layperson to come along and have a listen to, great information. It's all free. And we've been doing it for 5 years. I think I've recorded over 500 podcast episodes now.
Wow.
And we're just, we just absolutely love it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned just before Forage, and that's an interesting little sideline. And I'm going to go places with this, but can you explain where that started, why it started, and how it's evolved? Because I want to hook into this about how naturopaths or other health professionals can look at another revenue stream to help their business.
Absolutely.
Doing the right thing, by the way, by their patients,
Yeah, look, I hear all the time practitioners sending off their patients to go and find stuff. Send them into the wilderness to go into a shop that's, selling X, Y, and Z, and say, just go find yourself a gluten-free whatever, or go find yourself, this. They might write a brand down or whatever, and then people go, wandering, and they may lose track of time, and they find themselves at the local fresh food market, otherwise known as Woolies, and they go and buy something made by someone in a factory with a white coat, and it's highly processed, but it's called gluten-free. So they go, that's good enough. Yeah. And so they're buying something gluten-free, but not highly nutritious. So I've always encouraged practitioners to prescribe food as if it's a supplement. So I encourage people to prescribe forage and say, well, this is a highly nutritious, very unprocessed breakfast muesli that you can have, and I'll talk more about its origin in a second. And I would like you to have this for the next 4 to 5 or 6 weeks, and we'll see how your body goes with it. And so it then becomes a prescription. People really enjoy it. They're able to pick it up in their practitioner's office. It becomes a revenue stream for the practice, and that's great. But the origin of it was when I was doing the TV show, I was requested to make a muesli that people could eat and still lose weight. And I was like, how does that happen? How can people maintain a healthy eating program and eat grains and still get a great result? So I had to, think outside the box here a little bit. And I thought, well, if I use pseudo grains, if I went down more the seed line, I'd go better. So I made a mix that was really rich in nuts and seeds. So it was, your almonds, your sunflower seeds, pepitas. I thought we've got to kind of make this a little bit, more enjoyable. So we've got some quinoa and some amaranth and some millet. Put some buckwheat in there, it's a little lentil, and then a bit of brown rice. And I assembled that as a mix, and it was a hit. People loved it. And then I wrote the recipe up, and I put it in my recipe book, and people were buying it. And then they said, why don't you just make it? And so I decided to then go ahead and make it. And it's now become quite a great, it's a product that is around Australia and New Zealand. And practitioners have access to it. They can sell it in their practice. And it works to assist people in managing their blood sugar levels. I always recommend people use an appropriate milk and use a good quality yogurt, whether it be a coconut-based yogurt or a natural yogurt or a Greek yogurt. Yeah. I always recommend that people add fruit to that, and then they've got a beautiful meal. So it started from that. It was originally to help people lose weight, manage cholesterol, manage their blood sugar levels. And I made it with blood type sort of modelling, diet approach in mind. So I had to think of how can I put something together that should match most blood types all across the range.
Well, I've got to say, the inclusion of nuts, especially things like walnuts, especially for their phytosterol component, but also the much maligned, and I know you probably haven't got these in there, but the much maligned peanut actually has cardiovascular benefits. It's been bastardised because we didn't look after peanuts. But the aflatoxins and the peanuts in the bar with God knows whatever germs. But I think it's really interesting. You've combined some nuts that one would ordinarily think of eating raw with some, pseudo grains, whatever you want to call them, the millet and things, which I wouldn't ordinarily think of cooking first. So you eat this stuff raw.
Well, the one drawback that I have, and I'll be 100% transparent here and honest, is that the grains in our muesli product are puffed. And so, yes, that does do some damage. And so, we've got all that. The heat goes through it and bang, yes, that happens. It's a huge shift for people to move from cornflakes to something that's got those grains.
Yeah, what's the choice? Puffed. Yeah, what else are they going to choose?
I know, right? So my preference would be that people long term, would find ways to bring in other foods into their diet. This is a really simple way for people to actually start to eat, fabulous food without significant challenge on their body. So we've gone down the route of using those puff grains, but we've also got other blends. So we've got a Bircher blend, and the Bircher's made without oats. And so the Bircher's made with rolled brown rice. It's got sunflower seeds, almonds, pepitas, cranberries, coconut, macadamia nuts. It's got all these beautiful things in there that just really make it fabulous. But it's gluten-free as well. Then we've got a gluten-free porridge, and all the grains in there, so the amaranth and the quinoa and the rice have been steamed and then rolled. Then we add some organic vanilla and some cinnamon and some Rapadura sugar. What's unknown about Rapadura sugar is it's not very processed at all. It's just the sugarcane juice just dried out. And then it's very rich in molasses, so it's got high levels of iron, which is so good for celiacs and for people with non-celiac gluten sensitivity with iron levels that are dropping. So it's a really great way to increase a dietary source of iron that's vegetable-based. And then we've got a paleo blend, which is grain-free. And so we identified that, for many people, eating grains is a challenge for them. But we've also identified that, in taking people on a journey, taking them from zero to hero is really difficult. So a nice transition into a tasty muesli that, that offers lots of benefit at the same time, could still be improved upon, is a great way to go.
So I want to ask a question here, and it's something you just said, from zero to hero. So you've obviously looked at that story. And where I'm going with this is about what key messages would you get across to naturopaths to make a successful, profitable business that is still looking after their clients as number one without selling your soul? Because I think that's what zero to hero does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Zero to hero, when you put so much pressure on the patient, will burn people out. And I often talk about understanding how your practice runs. So what are the sorts of people that come into your practice? How much money are they spending in your practice before they disappear? How many times does a person come into your practice before they drop out of care? I like to have my naturopaths, and I have done in the past. I'm not doing it at the moment, but I have done in the past some coaching with naturopaths, and we look at those metrics to understand how's their business actually performing. A lot of naturopaths think that a business is essentially seeing the patient and collecting some money, but there's a whole lot of other things that need to go into that. And there's analysis of the spend and analysis of your patient. So some people go, I'm going to package up and I'm going to do lots of different programs and plans and provide all this extra value. And my program for the next 10 weeks is going to cost my patient $1,000, and the patient is used to paying Medicare. They're not used to paying $1,000 out of pocket, bang, just like that. And so you burn a massive hole in their pocket. So my first thing for all of my patients was always to collect information. So our first meeting was always about collecting information. And then I gave them a diet prescription. And so the easiest thing for them to do straight away was to be able to change their diet. So we identified what the offending factors might be, where they could actually improve things slightly, and I directed them down the pathway of ensuring that they made their breakfast, their lunch and their dinner as close to great as possible. Not necessarily perfect, but as close to great as possible. And that's the only thing I asked them to do for the first week. And then I'd ask them to come back a week later, and then I will have had a chance to just review the things we went through in the initial consultation, and then go back to them with a report of what I found, which we could call a report of findings. And in that report of findings, I'd give further prescription around food and lifestyle. So I might now start to include exercise or mindfulness or meditation. But then I'd say, yes, we've got these issues. You can correct a lot of that with your food, but you're going to need some nutritional support as well. And these are the nutrients I'd like you to do at this point in time. This is our priority right now. And so then we prioritise care based on what was most important for them at that time, given that their body could achieve that shift. So some people like to go and prescribe, $700 or $800 or $1,000 worth of supplements in one go. And people find themselves eating more supplements than food. And I think it should be more food than supplements.
Absolutely.
Supplements there to support the food, right? So people identified with that and they liked it. And, when I sold my practice, when I was in New Zealand, I was in practice, really close to full time. I was filming a TV show and I was studying full time as a chiropractor. And it was a very, very busy time. I was working 90, 95 hours a week. And what I found myself doing was completely burning myself out, but I had a great practice. And the year that I sold that practice was turning over close to $1 million. And this was when I was, in my fifth year of study as a chiropractor. And the reason why it was so successful was because we made sure that we understood what clients could spend and what they were expecting to get. And the number one expectation was a shift in their lifestyle.
Absolutely. And
the second most favourite thing that they got was care and concern. The least favourite thing that they got was a prescription for supplements.
Yes.
So we made sure that the supplements that we provided were the ones that were absolutely necessary.
I think we've lost the actual meaning of the word supplements rather than main limits.
That's right.
And it just, this prescriptive mentality for a pill, and don't think that doctors are anywhere outside of this at all. I see this more and more in, from doctors around the place. Jeepers, anybody who wants to blame naturopaths for being little pill pushers. So I think we should look at what polypharmacy is, because I remember when I consulted in pharmacy, I remember a lady who had reached her free list, that's 52 prescriptions, by March.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I know.
That's amazing.
So, and each one was, each subsequent medicine was to dampen a side effect of the previous medicine. And so eventually I'd had it. I said, this is unethical. We got her into hospital under the care of a physician that I knew, and she came out on 4 medicines. Now, you can't tell me that's not pill pushing. You can't tell me that's not lazy medicine.
Yeah.
Four medicines.
The concept of a pill for an ill, that's
crazy. And I think naturopaths have a real lesson to learn here. Do not follow that. Do not try and be little doctors. Maintain the principles of naturopathy, which is diet is the mainstay.
I love that. The moment that we continue to keep ourselves in a position of being an alternative to medicine, in other words, if we continue to try and treat disease in competition with medicine, it will only ever be seen as competitors or complementary and alternative to medicine. Naturopaths and chiropractors and osteopaths, we're a health profession onto our own. We are healthcare professionals. I don't like the idea of being alternative healthcare professionals. We're healthcare professionals. We train. We have a different model of healthcare. We're not an alternative medicine. We look at ways in which we can enhance the human performance of the human body. And we do it differently to the way in which medicine does. We're not an alternative. We're not a complement and an alternative to medicine. We're actually a system unto its own that can stand all by itself. We very rarely get referrals from GPs in medicine, so we don't need to be trying to do everything that they're doing. Let them do what they do and let us do what we do.
Mm. Damien, just on the topic of business development and successful practice, what messages can you impart to naturopaths around building a successful practice, particularly in regards to the framework which might be restrictive with regards to advertising?
Yeah, the marketplace is changing at the moment, Andrew. It's changing so much to the point that really, unless you've got a television show like Scrubs or I don't know, some kind of medical TV show where they promote
ER's
all the
gone,
benefits of all the drugs, ER, RPA, or any of those sorts of things where your profession's made to seem like it can do unbelievable things always, and everybody always ends up being, with a great story.
Scrubs?
Maybe
not Scrubs.
It's funny to look at ways in which people can do it, But Grey's Anatomy, for example, or House, there's an amazing diagnostician.
Yeah.
And you just think that that's just normal. But the reality is that's advertising. Because that takes television space. And in the main frame of people's minds, that is the way in which you do healthcare. Most naturopaths and most chiropractors and most osteopaths aren't going to have their own TV show. Tim Robards got one on The Bachelor, but he wasn't really talking health about that sort of stuff. But if you think about what we need to do, that is we need to provide more information to our community. So my best recommendation for practitioners out there is to build their community. And the way in which you build the community is to get out into the community. So bring people into your practice by running events such as seminars or open days. Get guest speakers in that you really resonate with, or collaborate with other practitioners that are like-minded. So if you're a naturopath, find yourself a chiro or an osteo. Find yourself a GP that you can do some, cross-promotion with and different seminars and events. Find yourself a yoga instructor or a Pilates class or any of those sorts of things. Create your own little BNI, your business network that you can go and meet with, and just talk about some of the things that are happening in your life or in your business or in your practice. That they can then also be very aware of what your reason is for seeing a practice member or a patient. And so in building your community, it's not so much about making claims of what you can do. It's about teaching people what you're about and who you are. People don't really care. I mean, they do. They're interested to know whether or not you've had success in a particular thing, but they really want to know whether or not they can have a relationship with you.
Yeah.
They're not that concerned about whether or not naturopathy is going to be good for them. It's like, are you the naturopath for them? And so they identify now, and we're moving into an age where people are identifying with personalities. That's why Facebook's popular, Instagram's popular, Snapchat's becoming more popular. Like all these social media things are all about collaboration, communities, conversation, and identifying with personalities that would otherwise be unreachable. So you don't need to make yourself a celebrity, but you need to create a community, and you do that through providing information. So the more free information you get out there, the better.
I spoke to Amy Skilton about how to use social media effectively, and she was giving some really salient points, indeed some warnings about what not to do, which was very interesting. I've got to ask you, you've developed a really successful network. That's come over time, but surely it can't have all been smooth sailing, right? Take us through what the highs and the lows were. What sort of things would you say to be mindful of or to be to avoid?
Definitely the highs when people say nice things about you. That's an absolute high. You love it. Having the opportunity to come onto FX podcast and talk with you, Andrew, that's a high. Right? Having recognition, that's a high. And so I love that. I enjoy that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But the lows are when you've got detractors, and they're the ones that kind of, pull and tug and try to defame you. And there's groups out there that literally are set up in order to defame and to do things that are counterproductive to the health promotion that naturopaths and chiropractors and natural health practitioners want to actually, promote. And I used to get really sucked in by the bad stuff that was written about me. And there's a group of doctors that are part of the Friends in Science and Medicine group. and they've put together a website, and on that website there's a whole lot of chiropractors and a whole lot of naturopaths that are listed in there as being rogues and being dangerous, and you should stay away from them. And I'm one of those. I'm one of those ones that's been listed on there. And I used to take a lot of offence to that, but I now don't worry about that because the people that are around me and come to see me are the ones that continue to support me. And so I'm focused more on what I can control as opposed to what I can't control.
I would think the Friends in Science of Medicine would have every single chiropractor in Australia on that list, wouldn't they?
Oh, at the moment, absolutely. Off the back of Catalyst, off the back of ABC, and then the Project and all the other shows it's just the same old repeated story.
What I think's interesting is that Catalyst doesn't have any coverage of the doctor that got a hand slap because they lied with regards to their medical acumen, their medical training, not their medical training, their medical work previously. They got a slap on the hand, but they were still employed by Queensland Health. Thanks very much for that. So, we don't see these.
I know, right?
Yeah, well, no, we don't.
Yeah,
we don't see these. I'm blessed, I guess, to be a member with AHPRA, and I see the dirt as well with regards to what happens with nurses, and we don't see that. That's sort of kept in house. Unless something public blows and the media gets a whiff of it. But it's just, we've seen the media blow. Indeed, have we so much with regards to, I think I might have seen one small story with regards to the specialists using low dose or underdosing, indeed, with chemotherapy at a certain Sydney hospital. And I just think that's very interesting. But no, it's the chiropractors that need to be deregistered. So really?
Oh, I know. Oh, it's amazing. Well, there's always things going on. I think at the moment, there's an enormous number of investigations at AHPRA at the moment, and the one profession with the greatest percentage of complaints against the profession is not chiropractic. It's not physiotherapy. It's not osteopaths. It's not naturopaths. It's not nurses. 4% of the whole profession is under investigation, and it's not the ones that they would like to call alternative or dangerous. There was a situation a couple of years ago where an obstetrician accidentally virtually decapitated a baby with a forceps delivery in Geelong. Still have the article. It appeared on page 7 of a newspaper. Whereas, if you look at Ian Rosberg's YouTube video of him adjusting a little baby the other day, that's had millions and millions of hits, and Ian wouldn't put a video up if it was a bad outcome. You wouldn't do that. It's only going to be a good outcome. And so the baby's very safe. The baby's very happy. The parents are very, very happy. I don't adjust babies like that. Ian does, and he does it with a lot of safety. But if the amount of attention that's brought that's unwarranted is profound.
Yeah, to me the difference is page 1, page 7. Hang on.
Yeah, there it is.
I think there's an inequality there, but we will move on to something more positive now.
Absolutely. Look, I think there's a lot of really great things happening in our profession across the board, and the reason why there's so much attention coming in is because we're all doing such a great job.
Yeah.
If we weren't doing such a great job, then there'd be less attention.
Absolutely.
And literally. And the government would shut us down. If we were dangerous, then we would be shut down. But, naturopaths and herbalists and homeopaths and acupuncturists, all of us, we have such a high safety record and a very high satisfaction rate with our patients. The satisfaction rates far outweigh the satisfaction rates of mainstream medicine because people don't want to just take drugs. They want a solution that's lifestyle-based. They want the power to come back to them.
Look, I can't wait for the day that it becomes a mainstream acceptance, if you like, that medicine has a model with which it works really, really well with. But independent to those very powerful pharmaceutical agents or surgery or whatever, particularly pharmaceutical agents, in attendance with those, there is a certain array of side effects or adverse events that we can minimise or mitigate by using nutrition, diet, lifestyle, meditation, yoga, and all of these things. And I really liked the words of an oncologist who has embraced safe and effective evidence-based, what she said, not integrative medicine. She says it's supportive care. It's just evidence-based supportive care. If it was a cherry, you wouldn't bat an eyelid. But, she said where there's evidence, she will use it for the betterment of her health, of her patient's health. And I think that's where we need to
thing.
sort of bridge the gap. But I think also naturopaths need to move a bit as well, not a little bit, a lot as well in
we do. All of us need to get our evidence base up, and our dialogue's got to improve. But our evidence base, unfortunately, our evidence base doesn't have the funding that Big Pharma provides for the other stuff.
Well, you can't patent.
That's challenging.
You can't patent a herb. You can't patent an egg.
No. That's right. That's right. So, we have to rely on government funding. And I think last year the government spent $1.2 million through the NHMRC budget, $1.2 million on alternative medicine research. $1.2 million doesn't go very far. We've got Big Pharma's budget of billions of dollars. So, our evidence base is going to be slow. It's going to be difficult for us to do RCTs. But getting together and getting case studies, I think that's a really important way we can actually start to get information and evidence out there. We have to understand that evidence doesn't only occur in the university studies. It doesn't only occur in the RCTs. Evidence is what we see in practice. Yeah. And so getting case studies written up and published is a good thing to do. We can't use testimonials anymore. So, and it's not wise to use testimonials because it implies that if we do one thing, it's going to happen to the next person. We can't say that. So what we've got to be able to do is give case studies that we can then go on and promote further research with. And that's a great way to build our evidence base.
And for our natural health practitioners, Dr. John Wardle has posted up, I can't remember which Facebook group it was, forgive me, about how to write a proper case history. That's publishable. And I tell you, that man is a man of reckoning. Like, he's amazing, along with Dr. Amy Steele, and what they're doing to help naturopaths being a force of recognition by, eventually, I hope, becoming registered is just incredible. They're really good people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Damien, just on wrapping up, what sort of advice can you give other practitioners with regards to, following your dreams to build a successful business that's still looking after the heart and soul of your patients?
That's such a great question, and it's so easy to answer. The number one thing, if you look at corporate structures and you look at the way in which a corporation runs, or any of the big companies and multinationals, if you look at the way in which they run, they're very driven by their purpose and their mission and their vision. And the reason why they make a decision, or the reason why they might acquire a company, is because it fits, what they can see that it will add strength, or they know that it actually helps to deliver more of their message. And I think it's really important that as natural health providers, we also have a vision and a mission and a purpose. And if we've got that and we live by it, then that becomes attractive. And so in our practice, every year we go and have an offsite. We go and recreate and just revisit our vision, mission, and purpose. We make sure we're always strategizing around that. And the only reason why you have vision, mission, and purpose is because you want to create change. And people will follow and people will come to you if you're trying to create change. If they suspect or they feel that you're only about the dollar, then they'll run for the hills.
Yeah, good.
But if they feel that you're there for them, or you're there for the greater good, or you're there spreading a message of hope or greatness or good health, then people will come and they will spend money. People don't like to be sold to, but they like to spend money. And so I like to encourage everybody who I surround myself with to be clear on their purpose, their vision, and their mission, because with that clarity comes a really an easy to follow model around building your business and still serving the community.
And it's not as easy as you might think. Oh, I'll just write them down in 5 minutes. You really have to put some time and effort into figuring out what is your mission and your vision.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And your purpose. Purpose is one of those things that helps you live a long time. We often talk about longevity, and and one of the great things about my podcast is that one of my podcasts is called 100 Not Out. We're taking a group of people over to the Greek island Ikaria, the people that listen to our podcast. We're taking them to the Ikaria to learn the secrets of longevity from the Icarians, because it's one of the blue zones. People forget to die in that little island, and so we want to learn why they live to beyond 100 so often, so frequently. So we're going there. So there's benefits to doing a podcast. But I can't even remember what I was going to say there, Andrew. But I think the key thing to remember is that when you've got a purpose, you actually provide yourself with something to be able to achieve. If you don't have a purpose, there's nothing that you ever could achieve. It's kind of like your goals. It's the wrapping around your goals. It's the wrapping around the reason why you've got a vision or a mission. The purpose, whether it's to have a great life or whether it's to help other people grow or whether it's to, live on an island in Greece called Ikaria. Whatever your purpose is, that's what's going to drive your decisions around your business.
Some great points on not just your story, which I think is a really wonderful story, a really nice positive story, but on also how you can teach others to build, to thrive, basically, to reach prosperity. I think that's some great messages that you've given us. Thanks so much for joining us today, Damien.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Thank you.
This is FX Medicine, and I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook. This is Andrew from FX Medicine. We thank you so much for your support over the last 2 years. We'd really love to remain clinically relevant to your practice. So if you know of an expert in some area, please let us know. You can contact us on fxmedicine.com.au, Facebook or Twitter.